Doctor, I guess I'll start off by taking a page out of Mike Shanklin's book and ask you how it is that you became a voluntarist, anarchist, libertarian.
Well, it was a dark and stormy night. I'm kidding. I was a Brooklyn College student, and I went to hear Ayn Rand speak. She came to Brooklyn College, and then maybe 3,000 of us in a big auditorium were all booing and hissing her, me certainly included, because she favored free enterprise, and everyone knew that capitalism meant starvation and exploitation, and, I was sort of a pinko liberal. And after the event, the Ayn Rand Study Club, or whatever it was that called that and invited her there, said that there's a luncheon in her honor and anyone can come even if you disagreed. And I didn't get enough booing and hissing. So I went there, and there was this long table, maybe 50 people on a side, and Ayn Rand was sitting at the head, and Alan Greenspan at one side of her, and Nathaniel Branden at the other, and I was relegated to the foot of the table, about 50 feet away or 100 feet away. And I turned to my neighbor and I said, what is this capitalist crap? It's all wrong. Socialism is the way to go. And I said, well, I don't really know all that much about it, but the people who do are at the other end of the table. So I was a chutzpahnik, and I still am sort of, and I went and I stuck my head in between Ayn Rand's and Nathaniel Branden's, who was her chief lieutenant, and I said, there's a socialist here who wants to debate someone on socialism and capitalism. And they said, who is it? And I said, it was me. And, I was like 20, 21 or so. I was a senior in college. And Branden was very, very gentle and courteous to me. And he said, look, I'll go to the other end of the table. There's no room to sit here. And I'll talk to you under two conditions. One, you promise not to let the conversation lapse with one luncheon discussion, but we continue until one of us converts the other or convinces the other. And secondly, you read two books that I'll recommend. And the two books were Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand and Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. Well, to make a long story short, I read the books. I went to Ayn Rand's apartment with Branden, or Branden's apartment, and Ayn Rand came there. There was Alan Greenspan, Peikoff, all the boys. And I must have gone 4 or 5 times, and I was converted. I was now a limited government libertarian of the Ayn Rand stripe. And I was a free enterpriser, not an anarchist, but a free enterpriser. And then I went to the Nathaniel Branden Institute, and I would sit in on those questions, and it was sort of cultish. I mean, if you asked Ayn Rand a question like, well, on page 432 of Atlas, you said this, could you please elaborate? Or what is your view on, the issue of the day? That was fine. But if you said on page 432 you said this, but on page 703 you said that, and I see an inconsistency, she'd kick you out of the meeting, which, I was sort of appalled. I was amazed that she would do that. So I sort of didn't stick with the Rand group. Later, I was in graduate school at Columbia getting my PhD in economics, and my friends Larry Moss, who was a fellow student of mine, recently departed, and Jerry Wallows, they said, you got to meet this guy, Murray Rothbard. And I said, oh, Murray Rothbard's an anarchist. He's an idiot. I don't want to meet him. And finally, Larry and these two guys got together, Jerry Wallows and Larry Moss, and somehow they pushed me into Murray's living room. And Murray converted me into anarchism in about 3 minutes. Well, maybe 5 minutes. He used the Hazlitt works. He said, well, you favor privatization because lower prices, better quality. Why doesn't it apply to police? Why doesn't it apply to courts? Why doesn't it apply to armies? Whatever. And he sort of really got me converted. He also converted me to Austrian economics, but that took a little longer, maybe a year or two, because I was a neoclassical economist then. So that's the story of how I got to it. Jerry Tuccilli once wrote a book, It Usually Begins with Ayn Rand. Well, that's certainly true for me. And then it usually ends with Murray Rothbard. Somebody should write a book on that. And Murray has been my man for many years. I'm a dedicated Rothbardian, which doesn't mean that I agree with him on everything, just 99.9% of everything. We're individuals. So that's my story.